Do you want to see what I got?
Yes.
I mean, it'll be next year when I get it.
Oh, you ordered something. You ordered a hot toy?
Mm-hmm.
Is there a poison ivy?
No, not yet.
What the fuck? That is truly amazing. The nipples and everything. It's so good.
Wait till you see the cod piece.
Is it separate or just like, do you just mean like pose in a different way? That's, I think, probably generous for Chris O'Donnell. That's so cool.
So they did Batman as well, and it is Val Kilmer.
Oh.
And let's be honest, Val Kilmer has the better bottom half of the face, but it's not the George Clooney batsuit is the one I want.
Sure.
But yeah, I will die if they do Ivy or Mr. Freeze.
Yeah.
It's just so good.
I hope they do Ivy, because I would go in on Ivy.
Yeah,
with you.
I can't imagine that people wouldn't like it. Like, want Ivy.
No,
well, and again, I was
want
like, Ivy and Mr. Freeze, their designs are so iconic.
They are very good. Very good.
Ugh,
That's amazing. No. I can't wait for that to come.
Hello, everybody. I am Will.
And I'm Kristen.
And this is So I'm Watching This Show, your twice weekly pop culture podcast where we talk about movies, TV, music, and more. And as always, this is a spoiler show, so you have been warned. On this joyous Fat Tuesday...
Oh, yes. Happy Mardi Gras. Happy Mardi Gras. I totally forgot.
We are going to be revisiting an old favorite of ours and see just how good it is. See if it really holds up.
I've only seen this once before.
No.
Yes.
I'm calling you a liar right now. You are lying.
How many times?
You've got to have seen this like 5 times.
No. There's no way.
I saw it so many times.
I will give you 3. I will give you 3 times.
The movie in question today will be the 2000 masterpiece, Dracula 2000. Play the trailer.
I don't want to die. There are worse things than death.
So you haven't told me your name.
This movie came out at a time. I actually saw a tweet where they were like, if I could pitch, movies in any era, it would be 2000, where you could just
what did seem like whatever you feel like.
You could walk into a production office and be like, Dracula 2000, and they'd hand you a bag of money. Yeah. This was when I was 15. This was post Scream. Mm-hmm. So Wes Craven had a little bit of a renaissance. This was post Matrix.
Sure.
This was
and you can tell.
Well, okay. So many of the reviews kept calling it a Matrix ripoff.
No, it's not a ripoff.
It does some Matrixy things, but I think time has been kind to that part.
Yes.
Because now Matrix is just sort of a genre.
Yeah.
Now that is so used that when this came out immediately following The Matrix, it looked like a ripoff.
Sure.
But now that's just standard action photography.
It also is like, I kind of hate that about the way that tech works, because it's like, any kind of motion capture stuff is like, well, that's just like Avatar. And it's like, yeah, because they developed the software. You think other people are not going to try to use that technology for stuff? It's
I think at the time they were calling it derivative, and for me, I would have, watching this in the year 2020, The Matrix wouldn't have come to mind.
No, it didn't at all. I mean, the closest thing is like some of the movements of the brides and then his trench coat, and that's like it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But this movie it flopped. It has a reputation for being terrible, like fiercely terrible.
Oh, it's not fiercely terrible, but I'm not surprised it flopped. I don't think it's fiercely terrible. I think it's medium.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it's medium. But I appreciate the effort
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Because like I said, I remember being like 15 and renting it and loving it.
Yeah.
I think it was a victim of the timing of it all, of everything. I think it was either ahead of or behind its time in some weird combination. I put this on the other day, first time watching it in a long time, fully prepared to eat my words. I think this movie is just great. Like, just actually great.
So I had a really fun time watching it. I think as a production, it's mediocre, but I had a really fun time watching it.
Well, what do you mean by as a production it's mediocre?
I think it's just fine. It's like, there's nothing flashy about it. There's nothing stupid. It's like very campy. It's very silly. It's just fine. It's not like an excellent film.
Well, I don't think it's an excellent film, but I think it's a good movie.
I think it's fine. I think my biggest issue is I think Justine Waddell is just wallpaper paste in this movie. I'm not entertained by any moment that she is like struggling with her whatever.
Okay. Maybe I'm just charmed because it's the girl from The Fall. She's done like 3 things.
There's something, her performance in The Fall is very intriguing to me.
Yeah.
She's like a very intriguing presence in that movie, and this is just like...
Well, I think the movie's first sin is that it was marketed and people treat it like it's a horror or slasher film.
And it's definitely not.
This is a fantasy film.
Well,
if
it's
you
also...
watch this...
It's also like a farce.
Why?
The deaths are so silly. This is a silly movie.
I mean, but I think it's all in on its... Like,
the way that Lachlan Monroe dies is silly.
Okay, how he's like... He's like 5th build. I have no idea where that came from. I want to see the contracts behind this because... what Justine Waddell was billed first over Gerard Butler.
Well, he wasn't a thing yet.
Well, sure, but it's called Dracula 2000. Okay, no, I really thought we were going to be on the same page. I think this movie is actually just great. I do think that you need to come at it for what it is.
Yeah.
It does look like it was filmed in the year 2000. Mm-hmm. A lot of things that were it really captures the cultural, landscape of 2000. So I think you do have to buy into its premise.
Yeah.
But I actually think it's an inventive, like the retelling of
I agree with
the
that.
Dracula myth.
I
love that it's all in on its fantasy elements.
Yep.
We start in the 1800s with the Demeter coming into port. And it has such an interesting mythos, such a vast world that I just sort of, like, for me, this should be treated more like Underworld.
Oh, okay, I can agree with that.
Or like this feels like Buffy or Teen Wolf or Supernatural.
Sure.
Like, it's like if you are open for a good time and yeah, it's, I think I said it was a serviceable script.
Mm-hmm.
It's not, I think it's a great story. I think the script is just medium.
I agree, because it's also it's a very, very the year 2000 script. Mm-hmm. And I think that was honestly this movie's biggest mistake, is that it was like, this is the year 2000 and you will not forget it. And like to the point where, Mary and Lucy work at the Virgin Megastore in New Orleans. And I'm just like, this is so timely.
But I love that because it's also, I mean, it's because Virgin.
Well, of course.
It's a little on the nose.
Again, I think it is. I think there are definitely good elements to it. And I think the mythos of this movie is what I think is my favorite part.
It's vast. When you have Christopher Plummer, which apparently I'm just a stan. Yeah, I just fucking love Christopher Plummer. But when you have Christopher Plummer as like an aging antiques dealer Van Helsing, and they imply he's like his grandson, but he's just Van Helsing. And
well, I think they imply that he is passing himself off as his grandson, but there is text in the movie that's like, I've been taking Dracula's blood through leeches to extend my life. He
opens a secret like compartment and takes out leeches and like injects them into his like heroin arm.
Like heroin. It's disgusting. It's like the end of Requiem for a Dream, like Jared Leto's arm at the end of that.
And then he like turns into like a partial vampire. And I was just like, oh yeah, wow. I forgot that this movie was actually kind of doing shit. Like that implies, like I said, that's fantasy novel. That's like the Vampire Diaries level of like world building shit. And then And the way
it doesn't take them 8 years to do it.
No, and the way in which they answer questions, because it's like the movie is kind of asking questions about the vampire mythos, and it answers them without giant neon signs pointing to it, yelling, "We did the thing."
Yeah.
Like, for instance, Lucy has to invite him in.
Yeah.
But there's not a big, like I said, neon sign being like, "Oh, they did the thing."
And he also isn't like, invite me in for a drink. She does it all
You
on
have
her
to be
own.
like aware of like the vampire mythos. This is largely, no, I'm going to take that back. The Gary Oldman, we've already covered that. That is a masterpiece. I think when I was talking about this movie being good or this movie being great, I'm looking at it in context.
Sure, of course, yes.
I'm not putting it toe to toe with Francis Ford Coppola's Dracula.
I will join you on the journey that says that movie is a legitimate masterpiece of a film.
But no,
I had a good time watching this again.
But then because the whole like him injecting himself with the vampire, it's like you kind of just get that.
Yeah.
As it is, like that makes sense. But then later when we have the flashback as to how he captured Dracula and about how one of the spears went through Dracula and pierced his shoulder, so he had vampire blood inserted in him.
Yeah.
So he's some weird half-breed. And we get all of this without like really clunky expository.
That is a blessing in a movie like this, where, just for the record, Jennifer Esposito puts on a British accent for like 10 minutes.
I never realized her name was Solina. Is that a name?
Oh, S-O-L?
Yeah.
Oh, no, I didn't. They sounded like Selena.
Yeah, her name's Solina.
Yeah, that's fun. No shade, Jennifer Esposito.
I love Jennifer Esposito.
It's not the greatest British accent.
But also, okay, so these actors, well, okay, back to the not being overly expository.
Again, a total blessing, because this is the type of movie absolutely that would get bogged down
in explaining what's happening.
Explaining exactly what happens. And I think that is something that is actually really impressive about this movie, is that I think they probably, because I actually read some of the trivia, and spoiler alert, the Weinsteins produced this movie, but Harvey specifically was like, he went to a screenwriter and was like, I have this movie, it's called Dracula 2000, I want you to take a pass at it. And the writer was like, oh, is it good? And he was like, no, it's dog shit. That's why I want you to take a pass at it. And I just think that having gone through multiple screenwriters, they were able to like excise some of that.
Well, and there are actually just decent performances in this movie.
There are.
These are people who understand, this is like Once Upon a Time level
logic, like, and stuff,
but also like it's like Lana Parrilla and Rebecca Mader shit, where they're not under any illusions as to what they're doing,
right? And like, I actually think I am very pro Gerard Butler's Dracula.
It's so good. He has 2 functions.
Yeah.
What does he speak? Like maybe 9 lines the entire time. By the end, he gets words. But
it's not a talky performance.
No.
And this was very early in his career. And his hair is spectacular.
So there's audition footage, and he's got like long, but it's like voluminous, like long.
That's probably too much.
No, it's too much for the role.
Okay.
But it's good for something else.
All this corrupted flesh. Who do you think actually found their precious salvation?
He has full like Persian, like 300 Persian eyeliner. Like he looks like Byzantine.
Xerxes?
Yeah. It's interesting.
Okay.
They went a different direction with the movie.
I appreciate the direction they went, because it doesn't feel like he's copying Gary Oldman or any other Dracula performance I've seen.
So they went to a bunch of people who wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole because of Gary Oldman.
Oh.
And
okay.
Gerard Butler was sort of like,
why not?
Young and hungry.
Yeah. Honestly, I enjoy Gerard Butler. I like him, I think, better when he's doing something interesting, which I would put this movie in that category. I think his performance in this is interesting. I saw a movie with him a way long time ago called Dear Frankie that I think is an interesting performance. When you get into the like, whatever, Olympus Has Fallen shit, it's like, get your coin, but like, that's not.
I think he's good at that too.
You're not like acting, though.
I want to see this one that he's in with Marina Baccarin.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, I'm here for it. One day it'll be rainy and I'll be like, I need a stupid action movie to watch, and I'll probably put on all 3
in
of those
that movie.
bitches.
Orlando's like the first city to be destroyed.
Oh,
it's like they show Central Florida being like.
It'll happen. I watched Geostorm. It's fun. I'm a really big Gerard Butler fan, but I gravitate more towards performances like this where he's doing something, you know?
So there's a scene early on after the weird heist. The sooner we're over that, the better.
It's true.
It's an odd, like that feels, we say this all the time, but it's frequently true. That feels like a plot line from a TV show.
Sure. Or like from the earlier script.
Yeah.
Because they also don't know what they're heisting.
Mm-hmm.
They just are like, he's like, Jennifer Esposito is like, he guards it like gold. And they're just like, well, it must be valuable. And it's like, it's a human person. Like,
well, and furthermore, they're complaining about like, he's a hoarder. It's just a bunch of like old shit. And I was like,
yeah, you mean like antiques?
Yeah, I was like, that's like priceless. Yeah. The things that they're just crushing.
You mean
and
valuable antiques?
But so there's a scene where we're introduced to Mary and she's having the nightmare and she wakes up and she's distraught. And Lucy comes to the door with coffee or whatever. And she's like, morning. And they make eye contact. And Lucy kind of goes, she sighs and she walks over and hands her the coffee. And they have this like entire moment where neither of them speaks a word.
Yeah.
And I just refuse to believe that the script was like that.
Sure.
You know what I mean? You know, in an earlier version of this, Lucy had to be like, Mary, what's wrong? I had the dream again. Oh, no. And that they would have to explain to each other. Never would I have been like, you know,
it's like,
well, we get me Justine Woodell and vitamin C.
Sure,
we need some nuance in this Dracula movie. Because Mina and Lucy, Mary, Mina and Lucy is one of my favorite like tropes. I love their relationship and I love the way that each version of Dracula explores their relationship, and everybody always finds a like not a completely different thing, but just the things that they read into their relationship.
I love it what you just said, because it reminds me of the thing that you always hate, where whenever there's like exposition between characters who should know these things already, and it's like, well, you know that we've been alone ever since mom and dad died in that car accident, and it's like, yeah, your brother knows that. What are you talking about? Why are you explaining this?
And so we have this just a really lovely show not tell moment.
Yeah.
And I find their ages interesting because they're not sexy teens.
No, they're like mid-20s.
Well, they were, Vitamin C was 29. And
I mean, they're presented as mid-20s.
Yeah, I think that they're a little bit just sort of like.
But I think Jerry Ryan and Jennifer Esposito were solidly 30.
Yeah. That's what like, and that I think is a little bit interesting.
It is.
I was kind of watching this as an adult, being like, oh, I can still relate to this in a way that I don't frequently when I go back and watch the slasher films that I watched as a youth.
This is also, I think, a really interesting portrayal of the brides.
This is the one version of Dracula where the brides are fleshed out.
They get stuff to do and say, and
they're like his henchwomen.
Yeah.
And they put up a fight. Like,
their dresses are,
which is
spectacular.
Which is from the book.
Yeah.
In the book, the brides wear white.
Yeah.
And no, the movies don't do that.
I'd really also, not to be like gross about it, but I'd like to spend a moment just appreciating Jerry Ryan's breasts in her dress. Because holy hell.
They're all
like the prow of a ship.
Getting the tits?
They're all comically hot, and especially
comically hot
in a 2000 way. Yeah. Like they've got, like Jennifer Esposito has the full hair.
Yeah.
Jerry Ryan, crunchy curls. Vitamin C, girl next door. Yep. Like she's got her tiny little perky boobies.
Yep.
Like each one of them makes sense as to how they get to this place.
100%.
And I think that that's something that I know that's something I always responded to when I was younger.
Yeah.
Is that this movie, of all things, has interesting roles for its female characters. Like,
well, there are 4.
Yeah.
There are 4 interesting female characters in this movie, and they are not samey with each other. They all have their own thing going.
Jerry Ryan is so funny as Valerie Sharp.
Getting the tits?
Yeah, like, just because I think that Mary is like wallpaper paste doesn't mean it's not a different take on the thing. It's like, you know, she thinks she has mental problems, that she's going crazy, that she's like bipolar or something, because she keeps having these visions of Dracula. That's a take on Mina. I like that, but it is also sort of.
Well, and I mean, also, I think it like. This is sort of Luke Skywalker. Well, a take I thought to be universal that apparently is not.
Pardon.
That Luke Skywalker syndrome. That Luke Skywalker is the boring.
The most boring.
Yeah, part. Nobody actually cares about Luke Skywalker. Yeah. You care about the characters around him. Right. And so Mary sort of has that like, she's not, of all of them, she's the least a character.
Yeah. But she does also have her best friend, Father Nathan Fillion. This movie is fucking weird. Shane West in this movie.
There are so many people in this movie that are about to be a thing.
Yeah.
Or were a thing.
That was the wild part to me, is that with the exception of, I think, Jerry Ryan only.
Or if you count Vitamin C.
Yeah, they were all about to be famous. This is before every single person in this movie had their big break. And I think that is hilarious. Because like by 1 year, it's hysterical. And I guess the like heist team at the beginning, because that's Sean Patrick Thomas and
Omar Epps
and Danny Masterson, who was already on a TV show. So it's like, and Lachlan Monroe, who was on Charmed and 90210, I think. So it's like the beginning people. And I think that's a page they took out of Scream, where it's like, well, all these famous people, all these people whose names you already know. And then they like basically all are decimated at the beginning, which is interesting. And I do still like it when that happens. It does still affect me.
I mean, Johnny Lee Miller, he's not necessarily dynamic, but he's a serviceable lead that you're able to follow through the motions.
It's also nice letting him have his real accent. Yeah, because he almost never is British and stuff.
He's just young and handsome. Yeah. Him and Mary are just the boring star-crossed lovers.
So here's the thing: is she gets more interesting to me in the scenes with him, because she is. And I feel weird I'm about to say this, because we complained a little bit about her performance in Bram Stoker's Dracula. I find Winona Ryder's performance as Mina to be way more interesting than Justine Waddell's Mary. And I think that that's odd, because
Winona Ryder puts on a there's an ingenue
she does have, and so I think
to Mina that it's not in this.
Basically, every time she's with Dracula, it's very sensual and interesting, and like, you know, you're like really into it. You're like, you can see how it's happening. And in this, she's just scared of him. There's no seduction.
Not until the end.
Until the very end.
Yeah. Because that's another thing that I was really kind of blown away from this movie, from a movie named Dracula 2000 that came out in the year 2000.
I do think its title also did it no favors.
That is merely presented by Wes Craven. The effects on this aged well.
They're not bad.
And
well, they didn't try to do anything too showy.
There are interesting effects. There's the shot of Lucy walking through Dracula when he turns to mist, and her hair like billows. There's the shot of him seducing Mary at the end, where he's sort of hovering his hand over her as she's levitating, and it's this kind of slow motion. And again, I can see how someone would say that was derivative of The Matrix in 2000, but in 2020, it's just a great glamour shot.
And then Jennifer Esposito is like tilting.
Stuff.
That was one of the parts I laughed the loudest at. Not her doing that, but in that scene when Dracula comes in to like rescue her, and the doctor is just like shrieking, and Dracula just goes, dignity.
Dignity, doctor.
Okay, there are clunkers written in this script that these people managed to deliver.
So it's a very Tandy Newton in the Chronicles of Riddick. It's a very flawless kind of thing.
And especially I would say Jennifer Esposito and Vitamin C get some of the clunkiest.
Yeah.
Like Vitamin C's reading of what's your name? After he's just like zoomed in on her.
Yeah.
And he's like, we're all so much more complicated than our names. And she just goes, I was named after the Peanuts character.
Yeah, that was good,
and then we smash cut to him just railing her on the ceiling.
He really does. He really does.
And I'm just sort of like, what movie is this? Yeah. And how are people not enjoying themselves?
Are you not entertained?
That's where I'm at with this. And I'm like, yeah, no, I understand it's not cinema, but I'm like, when you consider, and this is what I keep saying, where I throw down the word fantasy, which I want to do.
Yeah.
This was just before that stuff came back into fashion. This was just before sci-fi, fantasy, the superhero movies, musicals. Like, if they had waited several more years, then we would have been a little bit more...
Even like 2.
Yeah.
If we got into a post-Chicago Moulin Rouge place a little bit more.
Like, a little bit more willing to just sort of go on this journey with, like, you know, ancient antiques dealers fighting crime, and because there's also an element.
Was the Johnny Lee Miller, his line too. He got a couple clunkers in his "Don't ever mess with an antiques dealer" or something.
Never ever. It's the ever that gets me. The never, ever fuck with an antiques dealer.
Never, ever fuck with an antiques dealer.
He improvised that, and the director thought it was so funny that the director made him keep it in.
Oh, I did read something. Apparently, he just kept saying it around set. Mm-hmm. He was just like being silly and saying it around set, and the director was like, "How about try that in the movie?"
It's the thing where I think that like people thought, even the movie thought, this was for like teenage boys.
Sure.
And it's not. No. It's for urban gays. Like,
sure,
it's for, like, the people, it's like what they were saying, Jenny Nicholson in her Vampire Diaries thing, where she was like, it's like they thought, or maybe even Supernatural. I might be thinking of Supernatural. I'm thinking of Supernatural.
Okay.
But I still think it was Jenny Nicholson. Somebody that I watched said that it's like they thought Supernatural was going to be for teenage boys. And it was overwhelmingly, like, young women and like gays that were watching it.
Yeah. Spoiler alert, Jensen Ackles and Jared Padalecki are hot. So's Misha Collins.
And so the thing is, it's like, I think that this movie, to hit the point a third time, I think if you just want to see like a kind of cool fantasy horror film.
Yeah.
And I mean, in a post Saw, Hostel, like Game of Thrones, like True Blood world and all that, this movie's tame.
It's super
like,
tame.
The violence and gore in this is like old hat.
Yeah.
It also like, it answers questions that, and I said this in the beginning, it answers questions that you didn't know you were asking.
Yeah.
Like any time that we're given vampires in something, especially if you've seen it before, I'm always like, so what's the deal? What are the rules?
Yeah.
And because anytime that you have something
and why are the rules?
You have something like holy water or a cross or whatever, to me, that implies that there is a God in this reality.
Sure.
Or to go to the Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, when you're dealing with a literal devil, where is God in this reality? What does, and for me, it's hard to just hand wave that. I'm like, it's indirect, but it's setting precedents that I don't always think the movie intends to follow through on.
Sure.
And this movie does.
It does, and it's in a really, really interesting way.
Jesus is in this movie.
Jesus is in this movie, and I actually, this is full spoilers for the end of this movie. I do agree with you. This is one of the more interesting ways that it has been presented about how Dracula came to be, because the story is that he is Judas, and I kind of love that, and that's why wood hurts him because of the cross, and that's why silver hurts him because of the 40 pieces of silver. I think that's cool. I dig that a lot.
It's handled with just the right amount, because you said camp, and I actually don't know that I think it's not campy, but I don't think it's like a camp masterpiece.
No.
But it's handled with just the right amount of melodrama.
Sure.
That it's like, and again, with everybody being on the same page.
Yeah.
Like,
well, and also that you're totally right about the actors being on the same page, because nobody is treating this movie like it's serious. But
well, I was going to argue the exact opposite.
Okay,
but
they're not treating it like Shakespeare. They're treating it like their characters are real people, and that is what I appreciate. But nobody is coming at it like Halle Berry in, the first X-Men. The thing that's so cool about it is also the symmetry of like how it happens, because at the end he ends up being hanged. I think that's so good.
With Christ literally looking down on him.
I honestly think it's so good.
Neon, and that's where there's just design choices. There are so many places in this movie.
The New Orleans of it all is very good too.
There are so many places where this movie had no business being as good, or I'll even give I'm assuming you're arguing me in this. You out there in TV land.
The royal you.
Yeah, you're against me in this. I'll give this to you. There are so many places where this movie is competent where it doesn't need to be or had no right to be. Yeah. Like, I would never pick this up and be like, I bet you the costuming in this is good.
No, it's pretty good. It's pretty good.
I bet the hair and makeup is going to age really well.
It doesn't age badly. I think nobody has like a really unfortunate haircut, which is nice.
And that's to hit it one more time, this is a movie that has vitamin C in it.
Yeah.
That you can provide me.
And her hair's not orange, which is,
There's a scene where Mina is in her townhouse and she comes out of Lucy's bedroom and it's this billowing scarlet hall that's like extending like in real time into infinity.
Like The Shining.
With like curtains. Yeah. And suddenly the brides are on the ceiling. And it's like, this is what I want from my vampire shit.
Sure.
Like this sort of where the blood flows backwards. And there's a scene where she's running out of the apartment and she runs into Johnny Lee Miller's arms and they do like a Lux, like a triple Lux. And he shoots the gun at werewolf Dracula, an underutilized vampire power is the wolf.
And then he explodes into bats.
And it looks fine.
It does look pretty good. It's fine.
If I explained that to you and told you that effect was rendered in 2000 on like a $25 million budget.
Is that it?
I don't know. It's probably
more than that.
Okay, 50.
50. I did have a really good time watching it. And I will defend calling it campy because I think all of the heist stuff is super campy. All of their deaths, all of the heist people's deaths are super campy. And then almost all of them come back as vampires, and that's pretty campy too. Mm-hmm. That stuff is where I'm looking at.
But there's moments in there where, and it's the kind of movie you can't be fighting it. Like you can't sit down to watch this movie
to pick it apart.
Yeah, you can't.
But also the plot is pretty tight. So,
well, this is not one of those Dracula 2000 is a good movie. Change my mind. Like you can't come at it. Well, actually, I guess in that scenario, yes.
Yeah.
Regardless, you can't sit down and be like, yeah. You're gonna find fault with it. Mm-hmm. But no, the when you were talking about they come back, it's like there's a handful of and not a lot, but there's a handful of bits in this that I think are solid. Like the fight with Johnny Lee Miller and Omar Epps.
Yeah. In the loading area.
Yeah. Well, because for starters, Omar Epps kicks a trash
dumpster.
A dumpster, kicks a dumpster into Johnny Lee Miller's back.
Yeah.
And that shoves him into a Virgin Megastore truck. Yeah. And it's like kind of like a do-do-do. And you're like, it's like a mousetrap thing. It's really great. But you think he's handled Omar Epps and he turns around to do the like, say the cheesy thing. And like silently Omar Epps like rises again. Mm-hmm. And it's almost like a lion stalking his prey.
Yeah.
He starts to charge up on him. Also, this has a really good over under on jump scares. There's like 3 maybe.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But not it.
That's the thing is it's not a slasher movie. It's not even really a horror movie. It's like a little scary, movie. But it's just a vampire movie.
It's just a fantasy,
really,
like
really interesting.
It's a Van Helsing like TV show that should have been. I don't know.
Well, you did change my mind a little because now that we're talking about it, there are so many things in this movie I like, but this is not a great film.
Sure.
And like that is how you sounded like you were coming at it at the beginning.
It's not a good movie. Okay. It's not good, but it's great.
Yes. No. I'm with you there.
As far as this is better than 17%.
Is that what it has? Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, it's way better than that.
And I think time has done it well. I think it watches better now than it did when it came out.
And that's when I go back to the campy too, because like I think campy stuff ages in a way that's more fun.
And there's so many interesting, because they actually sacrificed one of my favorite effects, one of my favorite shots. It's in the trailer, but it's when Jerry Ryan is reporting. And originally they filmed Gerard Butler levitating out of the bayou in slow motion, so you can see the water pouring off of him, and he like rises up behind her, and it's like this really gorgeous shot, but it's not scary. And they opted to cut that for the reveal because she's just talking. And then all of a sudden, and Shane West is the only one there. He's her cameraman and he's looking through glass. So he doesn't see anything. Yeah. So she's just talking. And then all of a sudden she's like, and her neck just starts bleeding. Yeah. And when Shane West opens his eyes, you see this man behind her.
He's doing it with his
fingernail.
Yeah.
And it's like,
I thought that was a pretty cool shot too.
That's a good horror reveal. But like I said, they sacrificed one of the glamour shots, which this movie has a fair amount.
It does have oodles
of glamour shots that I just would never have guessed. And I think that's where so many people, because it's like our dear friend Yeti, one of the first things I remember him saying when we met was how this movie was dog shit. And I was gagged. I was like, excuse me?
Pardon me.
And I can see how you know, 21-year-old Yeti might have rented this and been like, what is this shit?
Sure.
This isn't TRL. Like, it plays
you
like
wouldn't know it from the cast.
If you can't tell by the energy I'm bringing to this, I was really delighted and taken aback. And even just we've done a series of movies in a row where we're revisiting something I liked when I was young.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty consistently being surprised that it's good. Mm-hmm. And I can't remember if you said this on or off screen, but you were like, you have pretty good taste.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, I was more surprised that I still liked this than I assumed you were going to still like it. Mm-hmm. I was a little surprised that I still liked it as much as I did because I remembered it being a lot cheesier than it is. Mm-hmm. And that's not to say it's not cheesy, because it is cheesy. And again, especially the heist stuff.
But that's where I'm saying all of this shit, all of the Riverdale, all of the Supernatural, all of the Vampire Diaries, I think it's reinvigorating the genre. I mean, Twilight, for the love of God.
Yeah. Talk about cheesy.
Yeah, it's reinvigorated the genre where you're like, this is actually just like a solid take.
Yeah.
And all the nods to the original Dracula story. Mm-hmm. This movie doesn't bother me that it takes everybody a minute to catch on.
Sure.
And that usually annoys me when people are like, what was that back there?
Yeah.
But the implication that I get from this movie is that and I've always felt this, but it's like that it takes place in a world where vampires are not common knowledge.
So like the book Dracula does not exist.
Kind of.
Okay.
That's always what I've gotten from this. Okay. And that they may have the slightest concept of a vampire in the sense that like we have a concept of like a hobgoblin or a brownie or a gremlin.
Like that's a monster.
Being a thing from folklore. But it's like the implication I have always gotten is that like vampire movies don't exist in this world.
Gotcha.
So that's always why and Dracula itself, they could be like, well, who? It's like, it's just, I guess, the way that everybody, including the script, approaches it.
Sure.
That it really just makes, and maybe it's because I saw it when I was young, I don't know, but that usually bothers me in these types of genre movies, and it does not faze me here.
No, I think you're right. I think it's a combination of that's a good explanation that, you know, vampires just aren't a thing
or aren't commonly known.
Yeah, and a mix of that and the performances where it's just like, oh yeah, I agree.
Because I could see Johnny Lee Miller being like, those things from storybooks, you know, like where it's like vampire is a very, very prominent concept in modern society.
For sure.
Also, I know the word Aramaic. They're throwing down like...
Oh, I mean, it's a language.
Yeah. But I mean, when I was 15, I didn't know that Jesus originally spoke Aramaic.
Oh, I see.
A lot of people got that from Passion of the Christ.
That's probably where I got it from, too.
So I did write down some of my favorite line readings. The first one I have is Johnny Lee Miller, where when Van Helsing, when Christopher Plummer is kind of explaining, he's like, what are those things? And Christopher Plummer's like, Draconia, Nosferatu, the undead. And he's just like, undead! It's stuff like that I don't believe that was in the script.
To say it that way?
The double undead?
Yeah. That's, I think, what we were talking about, where, like, these actors are actually really good at what they're doing in this movie.
And I also love when Johnny Lee Miller is going to stake, I think it's Sean Patrick Thomas. Mm-hmm. And he goes, sorry, sport, I'm an atheist. And that's when he presses the button and the stake comes out. And he goes, God loves you anyway.
Yeah.
That's a line that only works in a post-superhero work. Like with superhero movies being back in vogue. Fucking Jennifer Esposito. I'm telling you, the girl's got the worst of it. But when she's trying to seduce, again, Johnny Lee Miller, and she's like...
Johnny really gets it from all sides in this movie.
And she's like coming onto him, and she's like, and all I want to do is suck. And it's like... Yeah, I wrote the dignity doctor, and then the doctor just shrieking.
Yeah, it's very... that I actually laughed out loud when that happened. I thought it was very funny.
The third, actually, I'm gonna say it. The third note I wrote was like the drama of it all.
It is.
It's so
very dramatic.
It's so it's high on its own supply, and I'm all for it. I love this movie. I think Nathan Fillion is Sorry, I'm looking at my notes. Just when you think it can't get any sexier, we get Catherick Guilt and Nathan Fillion Priest.
Yeah.
Because I love when she's explaining...
the first of two Nathan Fillion Priest characters.
When Lucy's explaining to Dracula about the apartment being Mary's mother. Mm. And she's like, but we kind of redecorated, it was a little... And he just goes, Catholic. And she's like, ooh, yeah.
That was very funny, too.
The whole thing, like, just... And you don't know what the Virgin Megastore does to me. My heart
I do.
Sings.
I know.
They don't know.
I know. They don't know.
And even just that shot of him walking into the Virgin Megastore with all of the girls.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of like, it is lacking a gay scene. Mary and Lucy had a kiss that is deleted. Because the timing of it's terrible. It happens in between her getting accosted in the hall and running down the stairs and shooting the wolf.
Oh.
So there's this she runs down the hallway and then is like, oh.
Away from Lucy, scared.
Yeah. And Lucy approaches her and seduces her. And it's a fine scene, but it does not work at that point in the movie.
Definitely not.
But also there's no homosexual. There's no gay man stuff. But it doesn't not have a slight gaze.
It has a gay vibe. I mean,
a female gaze, a gay male gaze.
Because look, I was arguing with my husband about it last night, and he thinks that Gerard Butler has aged into his good looks. And I agree with that. But there is something about Gerard Butler in this movie with this hair and this outfit that is 2 thumbs up for sure.
He's a different person the next time we see him.
100%.
I just love it. And let me know, is this a gay movie? Is this things that gays?
Well, vitamin C is in it.
The kids don't know.
I know the kids
don't know. And you're going to learn. We're going to do a vitamin C episode. I loved vitamin C.
Also, the kids technically do know, but they don't know they know because she produced all of the music on Nickelodeon. I don't know if she still is. But she at one point she went corporate. Yeah.
She at one point was the vice president of music for Nickelodeon. She's written for Miley. She's written for Selena Gomez. She's produced a whole bunch of stuff. She went full corporate.
Yeah.
And also between
get your coin, vitamin C.
Well, between Smile and Graduation, she never has to work a day again in her life. Smile was on
sounds amazing.
Smile was on a McDonald's commercial 5 years ago. She also brought Lady Saw into even before Gwen Stefani.
Yeah.
She brought Lady Saw into mainstream pop music.
Interesting.
She was a thing. And again, it's weird because she was not a teenager like all the other pop girls were.
Yeah.
But she was huge for 2 years in the night. She had a hair color. She had a Tommy Hilfiger lipstick shade. Yeah. She had a Barbie. She was on the cover of People magazine with Beyonce and Pink.
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
Pour one out for Vitamin C's public career, I guess.
Well, like I said, she's married and got her money.
Yeah.
And she looks great. She looks like herself.
Good.
Yeah. We'll talk more. We'll talk about it more later.
C at some point.
I just wanted to say I meant to do it in the beginning, but I wanted to hit harder that we want things. We want likes and rates and reviews and subscribes. We're trying to hit 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. That unlocks the next level of content stuff for us. And we're not quite halfway there.
Yeah. Almost.
But we need all the subscribes we can get right now. And
we're going to get them from our Dracula 2000 cover.
You don't even have to watch it. Just subscribe.
Sure.
And I also wanted to point out, because we had not been pointing this out, that we are doing coverage of Riverdale, WandaVision, and Drag Race on the YouTube. So if you're only listening, check in on late Wednesday nights.
Late Friday nights.
And late Friday nights.
And sometimes Saturday, depending on how things go.
Check in on Thursday and Saturday for Riverdale and Drag Race and WandaVision.
Yeah,
so
for sure. Definitely. We got to get better at doing that stuff at the beginning of the episodes. Should do a business corner at the beginning.
What kind of business you in?
What kind of business you in? Okay, yeah. So Dracula 2000, I think, is to rent on major streaming services. I think you can get it on Amazon for sure. Check it out. We obviously like it. Yeah, spend a couple bucks. Give Justine Waddell
to your Witchers.
Yeah. Other than that, you can rate, review, and subscribe on. I didn't tell you where to follow us on Twitter @SoI'mWatching or Instagram @SoI'mWatching the show.
Shout out to Patreons.
Shout out to patrons. Yeah, their names will fly up at the end here. We are also using that currently, kind of like a tip jar, but we're still in talks about how to revamp it a little. Yeah, and then rate, review, and subscribe on iTunes or YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. That's it for us. Bye.